So the first type of reptile, even though it's not actually a reptile, but the first kind of critter we're going to talk about is the white tree frog. So this is not handled very much type of a pet.
Yeah, this is when we're trying to set up that environment and the house where it's going to be for a viewing animal, where we want to enjoy the environment and all that. White tree frogs are going to be a great occupant for that kind of a setup. We're able to kind of set up that slice of nature, let that animal live in there, but they don't deal well with handling. Amphibians absorb everything through their skin, so we want to do minimal handling. You can see we're wearing a glove for holding them. Just make sure that if there was anything on my hands, any soaps, perfumes, anything like that, they're not going to be able to absorb it. And so just to keep them nice and healthy, we want to go that route with them. But they set up a beautiful exhibit, you know, to be able to live in. So it's a great way to do it.
Got it. And what are these sorts of things? What should we be feeding them?
So these guys are going to be insectivores. They're going to go after any of the little bugs. They love to see things move, and they're going to jump around for them. So we're going to want to do all kinds of crickets, mealworms, roaches, any of those kinds of things. Always give a variety of options to them. That way we're completing their nutritional needs, but also keeping them so that they're enjoying hunting. We don't want them to get too lax and complacent eating the same thing all the time. They'll get lazy doing that. Got it.
And so this guy looks pretty small. Is this how big it gets? How big do you think these sorts of critters end up being?
So this guy here is just a baby. They're going to get much larger. He's going to get almost the size of my hand, actually.
Oh, wow.
So they're going to get a good size, and they'll have a nice, big, bulky size.
Yeah.
One of their other nicknames is called a dumpy tree frog, because they just get a big, dumpy-looking look to them. And so, yeah, no, they'll get nice, good size to it. Makes them easy to view in the cage as they get bigger.
Sure. So then we have like this. This is like a crested gecko terrarium. So when we think about habitats, this is a good size for now.
Yeah, this is going to be a great starter cage for him. We can get him growing up in there. We can observe him, see what he's doing in his environment, watch him be able to eat, make sure that he's nice and healthy, doing the activities that he wants, without giving him too big of a cage that he gets lost in, where we can't as easily observe him.
Got it. And so with something like this, it's taller than it is long. This is what, a 12 by 12 by 18 for a base?
Correct. Yep.
As the thing gets full size, do you have to also increase the habitat size?
Yeah, we'd want to go to something larger, something like an 18 by 18 by 24. We even make them all the way up to 36 inches tall. Okay. That way we can just let them use their entire environment, but also for when they're hunting, they're going to jump up and down to get to that food a lot of times, and we want to be able to give them that space to be able to hunt.
And when we're feeding, do we feed in the habitat?
Generally not a big issue with it, as long as there's plenty of places for them to be able to get around. We just want to make sure that we're not leaving too many insects inside of the cage. What can end up happening if the insects are left and he's gotten full, they're going to choose him to become the prey now, and they might start actually eating on him.
They gang up on the frog.
We don't want to let the insects gang up on the frog. So when we feed inside of the cage, always make sure that whatever food we've given them is eaten within a few minutes.
Got it. So that's one of the main ways you interact with these things is put the food in there and watch them eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great hunters, so it's fun to watch them eat. They'll use that tongue like we always see frogs use their tongue in the cartoons to scoop up their prey. So it's kind of a fun thing to watch them do.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you can put with a white tree frog, or is that the only thing that lives in this habitat?
I would leave him as his own occupant. The biggest issue with white tree frogs, especially as they get bigger, if it fits in their mouth, it will. So you got to be a little bit careful about that. They'll have big appetites and go after things, so you want to make sure that anything that was with it isn't something that you'd be able to eat.
Do they like if you get 2 of a kind or 3 of a kind, or is it just a solitary animal?
These guys will do well in a group together. Males will call, and they have a nice little bark to them. So having a male with a female, listening to them bark for the females is always kind of a fun thing to be able to do
that's
too.
Funny.
So yeah, no, they'll do well together.
Okay. So can live with their own kind, not other frogs, nothing else.
Yeah, generally not a good idea to mix them, because like I said, they'll keep size with each other, so they're not going to eat each other, but anything that was smaller they might eat. So we'd want to stay away from that.
And when we're talking about them eating bugs, how frequently and what kind of quantity do we think?
So what we're generally going to look at with these guys is, ideally you want to feed them every couple of days.
Okay.
We don't want to let them go too long. We don't want to eat a bunch and then have to wait for their food, but they don't necessarily need to eat every day either. Normally we're going to feed them 3-4 times a week. Each feeding is going to be somewhere between 6 and 12 crickets at a time.
Okay.
And what you want to do with these guys is, if you'll turn his head down, the food should sit between his eyes. That's about a proper size prey item for these guys. It's something that'll sit between their eyes. They'll eat things significantly bigger than that, because like I said, if it fits in their mouth, they'll take it. It's just going to be too much for them.
So this guy's probably just over an inch in length himself. So this is like a 1/4 inch cricket would be what
Correct.
we're...
Yep, I'd look at about a 1/4 inch cricket.
Got it. Cool. All right. So then this kit, gecko kit, what else besides what's in this kit would we want to outfit his habitat?
So when we get all these kits started, we give you a base. We want to let the keeper make it their own. So what we definitely want to do, these guys come, from a jungle. They live in Australia and in the South Pacific in the jungles. And so what we want to do is we want to kind of recreate that jungle look in there. Maybe give them a couple more branches, pieces of wood that look good, for the keeper. Create the environment how you want, and then more plants for them to be able to crawl on. They do like higher humidity because they live in the jungle, so you're going to need a misting bottle to be able to increase their humidity, but we can also look at things like misting bottle like that, or we can look at things like the foggers, which will help increase the humidity. Just ways that we want to make sure it stays nice and humid inside of the cage for them.
And then in order to maintain the humidity, do we have to apply a heating element or something like that to the environment, or how does that go for these guys?
So they're going to want to stay just a little bit warmer than room temperature. Usually right around about 80 degrees is going to be good for these guys. So a heating element would be a nice option for it. Now, there's a few different heating elements depending on what the keeper's house, how warm it is. That might create some options for us. But generally speaking, a small wattage dome light on top is going to work well.
Got it. And what is the temperature we would want in the main enclosure? Or do we want a gradient, or how does that go for these guys?
We're going to want to create a gradient in there. So top down, we're going to work on this one for our gradient. 80 up near the top, down at the bottom can be about 70 degrees.
Got it. Got it. So we have to make sure that when we're thinking about where in the home will you put this shouldn't be the coldest room in the house, probably.
Correct. We want to make sure that, it stays insulated from the, our natural house fluctuations as well. So don't put them right in front of a window. Don't put them in the coldest room in the house.
Got it. Got it. And then this habitat has the brick of the fiber.
The EcoEarth fiber? Yep.
Yeah, this stuff here. So this comes in a multi-pack. The habitat comes with a brick. How much of the brick, how much of one brick are you using at once in this thing?
So I would say for this cage, you're going to use about half of a brick to get started. Just enough to give us a nice little layer down on the bottom. That'll help hold some of the humidity in there, but also just works as a texture down there to be able to kind of create that jungle environment.
And so you soak the brick in water and it turns into like dirt looking stuff. Almost.
Exactly. Soak it in water, it'll expand, it'll turn into dirt down inside of the cage. Works great to be able to give us that natural jungle look.
And if the frog eats the bedding, how big a deal is that?
So any ingestion of substrate isn't ideal. However, as long as we have a nice healthy animal, that's never going to be a problem. We want to make sure they stay nice and humid, so that way their intestines and internal organs.
He says, I'm out of here. Come here, bud.
Yeah, again, as long as we keep them nice and humid, their internal organs are going to stay real nice and plump, and they're going to be able to pass those things through. But as long as they also stay warm, that's going to keep their metabolism going. So any accidental ingestions aren't going to be a big problem. Again, these guys being arboreal, they're going to do most of their feeding up in the trees, and they're going to wait for those crickets to climb up the branches. So they're going to have less likely chance to be able to ingest any of that.
So we do have, for other types of reptiles, we have like cups that suction cup up high. Would we use those sorts of things for this, or just throw the bugs in there and let the frog find them?
Both options are great ways to go. Some people want to be able to have a little bit more of that contained. I like to let the animals roam as much as they can, make them burn a few calories to get their meal.
Sure.
It's always good for them. But adding an arboreal cup for the water as well is always a good idea. These guys will go get water out of the leaves in the trees and things like that, where any of that settles. So it's a great option to be able to offer that. It's another idea you can use to decorate the cage.
Got it. So we've talked about the nutritional needs, which are going to be live bugs. We've talked about the frequency of feeding, which is, typically four times a week.
3 or 4 times a week, yep.
Okay. And then the size of the food is nothing. Basically, between the eyes is what we're looking at for the size of the prey. And then the environment needs to be taller than it is wide. We need to provide climbing and seclusion with additional foliage in that habitat. We use the EcoEarth to provide humidity and substrate for the bottom of the enclosure. What else do we need to know?
These guys can actually live a fairly long life for a frog. You're usually looking somewhere in that 10 to 12 year range. A lot of your frogs will only make it 5 or 6 years. These guys can have a nice long life, you know, in the frog world, but nothing compared to a tortoise.
Sure.
So we're gonna get a good life out of them, but not excessively long.
Got it. Got it. So, not that hard to care for. The biggest challenge is probably going to be the humidity for most people, right?
For most people, the humidity is going to be the biggest challenge. For a lot of people, what's great about these guys is that entry into the keeping, because we're creating up an environment. It's not just a stick in a water dish. It's a piece of art almost in your house. So for that person that's worried about having that ugly reptile cage,
sure,
this isn't going to be that. This is going to be that beautiful planted terrarium, and so it's going to be really nice. You know,
if he wants to climb. Like, this looks perfect home for me. I'm just going to make myself at home. Cool. All right, so we've talked about the White's tree frog. We've talked about their environment, their nutrition. Their behavior is that they are arboreal, meaning tree dwelling. They're going to climb. And then the maintenance, like how often are you cleaning or doing stuff to maintain the terrarium?
So what I always recommend is, generally speaking, about once a week. You're going to want to go in and spot clean the cage, look for any waste inside of there. Because they're arboreal, they may also go to the bathroom up on some of the leaves and things. So you're going to want to spot clean those things, clean as needed about once a week. And then about once every month to 6 weeks, we're going to want to clean out that substrate and do kind of a full refresher on it.
And when we clean, we're not using soaps, we're not using disinfectants.
No, we have some nice little cleaners that we can use that are going to be safe for them, like our wipeout cleaner over there. That's going to be nice and safe for them. So something like that's going to be a perfect thing to be able to clean the decor in there as well as the rest of the cage.
And this is frog safe?
Frog safe, yep.
Got it. Cool. Cool. All right. Well, that is the care requirements for our White's tree frog. He's like, all right. Oh, come
He's
here,
like, I've had enough.
I've had enough. That's the care requirements for our White's tree frog. If you have any questions about caring for a frog like this, please come into the store and speak with a pet counselor.